Well, hey guys, it's me, MetalMan8713 here, again today. How's it going? Today it's August 16th, 2014, and it's 3:15 in the afternoon, so, yep. I'm here to finally bring you a video which I promised to do in my last video, so yep, I'm sorry for the little waits, for this 1 week wait on my next video, I did promise to record this earlier on in the week, but I had a few hiccups uploading the Lake District and Blackpool video. So yep, I'm uploading part 2 right now on my iPad right here, as you can see right in there. YouTube, it's uploading at the moment busily. So yep, and well, so yep, in this video today I'm here to bring you the history of another heavy metal group. This heavy metal band are from Yorkshire. They're from one of the 4 major counties at North Yorkshire. They're from a little town called Barnsley in South Yorkshire, and they had very huge success in the 80s. And they had a bit of decline in popularity, then sprung back up in the 2000s and remained active ever since. So yeah, and that band I'm talking about is Saxon. So yes, I'm here to bring you a history on the group. So yep, and what I'm showing you now is a picture of the band's most successful lineup on the back. This is the band's classic lineup featuring Biff Byford, Graham Oliver, he had a moustache in them days, Paul Quinn on guitars, he's got a bit of a bald head, he used to wear American baseball caps in those days, and there's Pete Gill and Steve Dawson. So yep, I'm here to bring you a 2-part video on the history of the group. In the next part after this clip, in the first part, which will be after this clip, I will be talking about the band's history throughout the 1970s and 80s, how when they formed, their rise to success, and also their decline in popularity as a result of a few factors. So yep, and then part 2 I'm going to be talking about the band in the 90s, 2000s, 2010s, their return to their European metal roots, their their revival in popularity and current status and everything like that. So yep, well, and well, if you notice the title just just on the bottom of the screen, this is only just temporary. It will be back to the black and white titles in my one of my in my next video. So yep, well, I've got to say to you now, guys. I hope you enjoy this video. Peace. Peace. Sorry, just had that pause for a moment. I don't know. Enjoy the video. Oh, and well, before I talk about the more Saxon rise to success, I'm just going to give you a little bit of background about the members and the road which leads up to the forming of the group in 1976. All the members were born in the early 1950s, and they grew up in South and West Yorkshire. So yep, yep, at the time for the band's first lineup, there was a vocalist called Biff Byford. There was guitarist Paul Quinn and Graham Oliver, bassist Steve Dawson, and drummer David Ward, who was later replaced by Pete Gill. But I'm going to talk to you about that in a second. Yep. So the band members were born around there, and they grew up around the South and West Yorkshire areas. So yep, and then in the early 70s, both the members formed 2 separate bands at the time, local bands. This was before they came together. What I'm trying to say, though, from about 1970 to 1976, vocalist Biff Byford and guitarist Paul Quinn formed a band called Coast, and they toured around the country at that time. Well, not toured around the country. They played most of their gigs in Barnsley in South Yorkshire, where Barnsley Town Hall being their main gig, and shortly afterwards the the other members of the band quit because they didn't really want to do music, or or wanted to just stay your club, you're playing in the club. So and then in about 1976 that band merged with another group called Son of a Bitch. It wasn't called Son of a Bitch yet, but sorry for the language saying this, but it was called SOB before it became that name. So SOB, it was formed by Graham Oliver and Steve Dawson in 1970s, and there were another local group around the same time, around the South Yorkshire music scene. So and they mainly played gigs around that area. So and then they mainly played gigs around the South Yorkshire area. So and then in about 1976, this band got together with Biff Byford's Coast, and they joined together to form a new band called SOB. It's now called Son of a Bitch. That's what the band's name was called. They had it for about 2 years. They started touring around the pubs and clubs around the time, around the area, and around them as well, around the UK as well at the time. So the lineup at the time at the start comprised of Biff Byford, Paul Quinn, Graham Oliver, Steve Dawson and drummer David Ward. And then afterwards, 2 years later, the band changed their name to Saxon in order to. I'm going to tell you about the band's record deal in a moment. The band changed their name to Saxon in 1978, and David Ward was replaced by Pete Gill, who was a member of Gary Glitter's band in the mid 70s. Sorry. So in approaching their record deal, the band signed with a French record label called Carrera Records, run by someone called Claude Carrera. So they signed. Who runs the label? So they signed with that group in 1978, 1979. They released there is some demos of their songs in 1978. Just before they changed the name Saxon. This was when they were back called Son of a Bitch in 1978, and then when they got the record deal in 1979, they changed their excuse me. Excuse me, sorry, that was a bit rude, I mean, excuse me, sorry. Just anyway, in 1979, the band changed their name to Saxon, and they released their first album right here. So and this picture on the back was back when just before the band changed their name. So all the members looked very young at the time. So Saxon released that album in May of 1979, and it was the first album to be considered a new Wobham album, and the first one released by a new Wobham artist, not counting Motorhead and Judas Priest. This was Motorhead and Judas Priest were more progressive in the mid 70s. They changed to a more heavier style in the late 70s, and Motorhead were your heavy, it's a mix of heavy metal and punk rock to create speed and thrash metal. So but I think Motorhead and Saxon were the first. Motorhead preceded the movement by a few years. So and on tour. They toured the UK, and in late 1979, they were offered 2 tours. Well, one of them was UFO. It was a 6 weeks around Europe supporting UFO, and the other one was Motorhead. It was the Bomber tour. But the only thing was that about the Bomber tour, when Motorhead, that the band had to pay about £5,000 to get on it, £5,000. Well, originally, they wanted to do the UFO tour, but then the management put them on the Motorhead tour, even though they weren't really interested in doing it. But they said it was just the right audience for them to do. So it was a great opportunity for the band to support Motorhead in 1979, because they were riding high at the time, shall we say, and and their management wanted a good support band, and then they came in, and then Motorhead's management recommended Saxon as, you know, highly recommended, you know. So yep. Well, they toured the UK around late 1979, playing all the major big places. I don't mean arenas, I mean your concert halls, you know, that sort of thing. And they toured the UK in late 1979, and both bands got on really, really well. A lot of fun, frolics on tour. So yep. Well, that's where I think the band were introduced alcohol on that tour. I mean, at the time the band were tea drinkers as well. You know, for example, I'm just going to quickly tell you this. You know, Steve Dawson was on the bus with Lemmy. He gets out a bottle of vodka and orange juice, and he just reaches out to him, and goes like, yeah. You know, and then afterwards, next to him smoking, you know. You know, so yeah, there were lots of fun and frolics on that tour as well. So yep, and well, this is where the big story starts for Saxon. Their success period in the UK. In 1980, they released their second album called Wheels of Steel, which was their major breakthrough hit, and this album spawned two of their best hits so far, and 2 chart hits, Wheels of Steel and 747 Strangers in the Night, which the band appeared on Top of the Pops in 1980 to promote that, and they went on a series of UK tours around the UK, building up their popularity. You know, so the band was starting to gain a very big following around the time, and, you know, also when they were touring with Motorhead as well, so yep, and also when they were touring in the clubs as well, and also when they were touring with Motorhead, and yeah, but no, when that album came out, their popularity was starting to build up at the time. Whoa! I'm sorry guys, I just accidentally hit the tripod. I'm still gonna carry on with the video. Just forget I didn't hit the tripod. That was an accident. I'm sorry guys about that. So yep. Well, Wheels of Steel, they toured around the UK supporting the album, and with another new album group from this area from Whitley Bay called Tigers of Pantan. They supported them on their UK tour. So yep. And I forgot to mention, Wheels of Steel was the first of 2 Saxon albums in 1980. This one came out in May 1980, and this album reached number 5 in the UK charts, really reached the top 5 in the UK, reaching number 5, so yep. And this album went platinum in this country as well, so yep. And well, later on, in 1980, the band appeared at the first Donington Festival, Monsters of Rock, where Rainbow were headlining, and there was several other bands there as well. There was Touch, Riot, April Wine, Judas Priest, Scorpions, you know. Really, that was a really good lineup, and there was about 35,000 people down that day. So they were the only new band to appear at the festival. So yep, and they had a very big positive reception for the crowd. Great positive reception from the crowd. So yep, and also during 1980, the band released what most fans considered to be their best work so far, namely Stronam of the Law. You know, so yep, this is Saxon's second album in 1980, and I forgot to mention also, Wheels of Steel did contain many of the band's, you know, setlist classics in the setlist, such as Motorcycle Man, Wheels of Steel, 747, See the Light Shining, Susie Hold On, Machine Gun, Freeway Mad, you know, and amongst others, so yep. And I forgot to mention about Saxon, that had a regular track off there, played in Neil Kay's heavy metal club called Soundhouse, called Stallions at the Highway. That was a regularly played track at the Soundhouse. So yep, that's at the Soundhouse in 1979, 1980, 1981. So yep. Well, anyway, that was a regularly played track at the Soundhouse. So. Yep. So yep. And well, I'll say again, this came out in 1980. This contained more at the band's chart classics. So no, not chart classics, stage classics as well. Many of these remain staples in the set list, such as Heavy Metal Thunder, To Hell and Back Again, Strong Arm the Law, Taking New Chances, 20,000 Feet, Hungry Years, 6 Girls, and the very excellent stage classic Dallas 1pm about the murder of President John F. Kennedy. So yep. Well, so yep, this album reached number 11 in the UK at the time, and also around this time the band started touring Europe. They started in Europe and started to gain a really big fan base over there as well in the UK at the time. So yep, and also the band also gained really great success in Japan, where Motorcycle Man off Wheels of Steel stayed in the charts for about 5 months. So yep. And also at the time the band started touring America as well, supporting a lot of bands as well. Priest, Scorpions, UFO, they were still rising in popularity as well around the same time. So yep. Well, and so yep, in 1981, by the time in 1981, the band, had toured most of the world at the time, and they had less time to record their albums. So yep, they had less time to record new albums. So yep, and also the band were really growing in popularity at the time, in the UK and Europe as well, and other territories as well. So yep, 1 minute, let me just get this. So yep, and then then luckily, by chance, on tour in Europe, they found time to record what most people consider to be their last classic album of Saxon, the last in their trilogy of classic albums, alongside Wheels of Steel and Strong Arm the Law, and that is Denim and Leather. So yep, really excellent album in my opinion. So yep, still features more stage fan favourites. Princess of the Night band's played on. Never Surrender. The band made more appearances on Top of the Pops in 1981, promoting, and the band's played on, and Never Surrender. So yep, and well, so yep, this came out in October 1981, and it reached number 9 in the UK as well. So yep, and also this contained the classic metal anthem at the time called Denim and Leather. So yep, I'm just going to tell you one little hiccup what happened around the time. Drummer Pete Gill injured his hand around the time, so he couldn't play drums. He took a break after that. Then he re-emerged 3 years later in Motorhead. So yep, the band had to quickly find a replacement. So they managed to get drummer Nigel Glocker from the band who was in Toyah Wilcox's band in 1981. She had released their most successful album ever, called Anthem. He had only been in that band for a little while. So yep, and then when he auditioned for Saxon, when he joined the band, he had to learn the whole set within a day, because the band were about to go on tour to support the massive success of that album. So yep, the band toured throughout. The band toured throughout 1981 and 82, supporting that album. The band were at their peak of popularity. They were at their hot streak, So yep, and the band tried to also conquer the US as well in 1982. They played mainly like theatres and stuff like that. The band were a major force now in UK and Europe in heavy metal. So yep, and also in 1982 the band appeared at Donington as well. They became the first group to appear twice at the festival. So yep, they had to come back to England from America to do the show, then go back all the way to America to continue their tour. So yep, and I forgot to mention, and the tour was also a really great, marvellous success. They did more UK tours and European tours. So yep, so yep. Come on, 1983, and wait a minute. I can't move on to the next album without talking about this. The Eagles landed. So yep, the band recorded a live album while they're on tour during the Denim and Leather tour in 1981 in the UK and Europe. So yep, and they managed to, and they released this classic heavy metal live album right here called The Eagle Has Landed. So yep, this album reached number 5 as well as Wheels of Steel, and this album was reached at the peak of their popularity, huge success as well. So yep, this won the British Heavy Metal Live 1982 award. So yep, and many people consider this a classic heavy metal live album. So yep, and well, so yep, that's that. Now we can talk about this. 1983, this started a downturn in their popularity. Started going backwards and going down the slide. You know, so yep. Well, in 1983, the band released their 5th album called Power and the Glory. So yep, in comparison to their albums, this album only reached number 15 in the charts. In this country, and this was the last album released on Crusader Records as the band would leave that label and sign with EMI in 1984. So yep, this album only had a few favourites in the set list. Power and the Glory, you know, Eagles Landed, Red Eye Warrior. That's all. This Time Rocks, watch this guy. Nice stars, watch this guy. This Time Rocks, Night Mount Warrior, Red Line. This album only contained a couple of favourites which entered the set list at the time. The Eagles, namely Power and the Glory, and the Eagles Landed. So yep, and the album was okay. It sort of did wellish, sort of, but not to the point of their previous albums. So yep. The tour was a very great success though, in Europe and America and the UK. Huge success in America, and the band were on the verge of breaking big in America at the time, 1983. But one little downturn which would prevent that happening would be glam metal. Glam metal was another genre rising at the time. So yep, and the band started to prevent the band from breaking big in the US market. So yep, and I forgot to mention, Power and the Glory had their first US chart position of it's 155 in the US charts. So it's hardly the big league in my opinion, but you know, well, so yep. I forgot to mention also, when they're on tour in America, the band supported Iron Maiden on the first leg of their American tour, and then afterwards they left Iron Maiden behind and launched their own tour, which the band have regretted that decision to this day. They think it was a mistake. Well, the band did make a few, made a few wrong decisions which would lead to a few consequences for the group. So, yep. Well, overall, the tour was a very great... I'm sorry about that, guys. My camera just clicked off on me. I think it reached about 20 minutes. So, yep. I think I'm going to be ended up talking way more than I wanted to. So, you could call this part 2 of the 1980s Saxon. In this part, I'm going to tell you about the downturn in their popularity. So, yep. Well, the band made another whoopsie-daisy decision in 1984, and when they recorded their 6th album called Crusader. This features the fan favourite Crusader, but the other tracks, I don't think they weren't. The other tracks, they weren't so well received. So yep. In my opinion, I don't think this album's really good in my opinion, except the title track. I really like the title track, but the rest of the songs, in my opinion, I don't think they really fit in with the rest of the album. I think if they've called this Crusader, I think they should record more tracks relating to the theme, middle age theme, medieval theme, in that area. So yep, well, great cover art, mind you, but really not a really great album in my opinion. So yep, this album debuted a bit low on the UK charts at 18, and in America it made 174 on the US Billboard charts, which is hardly the big league again, but so yep. And well, that contained the fan favourite called Crusader. you know. And then afterwards, the tour was, you know, a success in Europe and America again. Well, the band, over in America, the Crocus, I think Crocus and Morty Crew supported the band on select dates as well, so, yep. And, well, the tour, and also the stage set was, you know, the floor was made of lino. It was relating to the theme of Crusader. It had like a castle-y type stage set, so yeah, a bit elaborate, you know, for the band at the time. So, yep. Yep, the tour was still, again, excellent success in Europe and America. But, one of the major downsides to Crusader is, in the eyes of, like, more traditional heavy metal fans, this album sounds a lot. It's still heavy, mind you, but it's still heavy, but you know, but the album sounds a lot more commercial sounding. You know, if you put it on, just you know, hey, add on, that's a bit different. It's not really the old heavy Saxon, you know, the Princess of the Night, Wheels of Steel, Symbol 73. Oh, hang on, it's a bit commercial, that ain't it? That's a bit commercial, that, isn't it? Oh, well, so yep. And well, I forgot to mention as well, Saxon also did their very first cover song on that album. They did a cover of The Sweets, Set Me Free. And well, another mistake they made, they didn't really do it in their own way. They tried to copy the original, so yep. And well, so yep. And yep. And that album also left fans saying, you know, what direction is Saxon taking? You know? Well, something like that, so, yep. And well, anyway, 1984, signed to EMI, and then afterwards, 1985, this was the last album with Steve Dawson at the helm on bass. The band released a more commercial sounding album called Innocence Is No Excuse. And it was, you know, at the time it wasn't really as well received as it is today, but it left the group's fan base sort of divided in a way, sort of, in like, if a traditional heavy metal fan may go like, you know, or the promoter, or the band may go like, you know, if we change our music style, our fans may go mad if we change, I'll talk about that a bit later. So, yep, well, I don't know, I just said that for a moment ago, so yep. Innocence Is No Excuse, it was a more commercial sound album, and had a very strong set list. One critic, said a few songs in the album were marvellous, but the other songs were it left the bands where it didn't really sit, and you know, I've got to mention, Crusader had a ballad where it didn't really work. It had too much Dover-drenched lyrics. It sailed over the heads of their female audience. So yep, well, three songs of the album sounded great, while he thought the other songs were sort of like, okay, but you know, so yep, and there was a huge tours in support of the album. The band was still a very big concert act, although their albums didn't do well at the time in the mid-80s, but they were still a very big concert act, so yep. The band embarked on a huge world tour in 1985-86 in support of the album, but at that time there were little cracks, tensions beginning to appear within the band, and then in early 1986, Steve Dawson, a key songwriter in the group and bass player, and one of the founders of the band, left the band because of a few problems. You know, he's facing divorce from his wife, and I think direction what the group were taking time. Well, not so much direction what the group were taking, it's just he left because of his wife, you know. So yep, he left because he was getting a divorce from his wife. So yep. And then at that time, the band were recording, like, you know, well, it had a really great cover art, but not really good album. But you know, that album is called Rock the Nations, where, you know, that was the first album without Steve Dawson on bass. Well, Biff Byford had to play bass parts on that album, and also that album had a guest appearance from Elton John on 2 songs, Party Till You Puke and Northern Lady. So, yep. And well, it wasn't really good album. The group's audience started to drift away around this time. So, yep. And also for the tour, the band hired an unknown bassist called Paul Johnson to fill in. He joined the group full time on their tour. So yep, they played at the Reading Festival in 1986, and then the band embarked on a European arena and stadium tour as well in the autumn. So yep, and then later on afterwards they toured the States with Yngwie Malmsteen at the helm. So yep, with Yngwie Malmsteen as a support act or headline act. So yep, and then afterwards. So yep, and then come 1987, the band took a break mainly from tour. Took a break from touring, except the US and Canada, where they did a minor tour as well. So yep. In 1988, what considered to be one of the band's worst efforts, but it managed to spark a brief revival in popularity for the group at the time, was an album called Destiny. And well, I forgot to mention, the band found it very, very hard. The band found it very, 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 very hard to break big in America. With American success hard to find at the time in 1988, the band released that album Destiny in 1988. It did not help, but it did contain a cover which managed to revive the band only temporarily, called Ride Like the Wind. So yep, really great video as well, but you know, the rest of the album wasn't really all that good, so yep. And then that was the only Saxon album with Paul Johnson on bass, so yep, and the band was so losing their fan base. I forgot to mention that Innocence Is No Excuse debuted in the UK at 36 on the charts. Rock the Nations debuted at 34, and in America in 1985, Innocence Is No Excuse, that debuted at 135, but that was the band, although it wasn't really up there with the big stars, it was the band's highest chart placing in America, and for Rock the Nations, that album, you know, and one minute, and I forgot to mention, in 1988, the band embarked on their, the band also declined in popularity in this country and in Europe at the time. So yep. 1 minute. Innocence Is No Excuse debuted at 133, 130. And then Rock the Nations debuted at 149 on the US charts, so yep. Well, back to 1988, well, Destiny, well, it wasn't really good, but the band, well, Rock the Nations, Innocence Is No Excuse, more like a commercial sort of glam album. Rock the Nations, it was still like glam in a way, but it had a little bit more gritty, heavier sound on it. The band were trying to get to success in America at the time, like what your Whitesnake were doing, you're updating their image and releasing their. Well, Whitesnake did very, very well, actually, but I'm not going to talk about it. But I'm not going to talk about Whitesnake. I'm going to talk about Saxon at the moment. So yeah, and Destiny, it wasn't really a good album, but and then after the tour, Saxon were dropped by EMI. And then Paul Johnson left the band at the time, and he was replaced by what many fans many fans think is a really great current member of the band, called Nibs Carter, he's called Timothy Nibs Carter, or the band, or Nibs Carter. So yep, and he came from the band Fastway. He just come back from doing session work with them in 1987, so yep, and then Well, then he was recruited by the band to replace Paul Johnson, so yep. And then he was well received by Saxon fans, and he was readily accepted as a member of the band, so yep. And then in 1989, the band released their second live album called Rock and Roll Gypsies Live, I think it's called. Rock and Roll Gypsies. And so, yep, and released on an independent label, so yep, but the band at this time had no record deal in sight, and Saxon's future looked uncertain, so yep. Well, that's the end for part 2. In part 3, I'm going to be talking about the 90s, 2000s and 2010s of the group and their current status, so yep. I'll see you guys in a moment. Peace.